From Washington, this is VOA News. Typhoon aid reaches remote areas of the central Philippines. Egypt responds to Syria polio outbreak. I'm Ray Kouguell reporting from Washington. International aid is starting to get to the remote areas of the central Philippines, 10 days after the region was devastated by Typhoon Haiyan. The United Nations Humanitarian Affairs Office says about 13 million people are affected. Simone Orendain reports on the recovery effort.
The UN cites three major infrastructure concerns that have hampered relief and recovery operations: the lack of power, poor communication, and impassable roads compounded by little access to fuel. According to the latest figures from the Civil Defense Office, more than a dozen provinces are still experiencing some form of power outage, with Leyte and Samar in the east remaining completely dark. Cellular service is mostly restored in 13 provinces, but the three easternmost provinces of Samar, Leyte, and Biliran only have about 50% or less of service. Simone Orendain for VOA News, Manila.
Philippine President Benigno Aquino continues to tour the typhoon-battered center of the country and vows to stay there until he's satisfied with how the aid efforts are progressing. The United Nations Special Envoy to North Korea travels to China on Tuesday. It's all part of a larger trip to Asia as regional powers step up efforts to restart talks in ending Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program. VOA's Bill Ide has details.
When Glenn Davies arrives in Beijing, it will be the second time he has met with China's top negotiator, Wu Dawei, in the short space of less than a month. Wu has been traveling between Pyongyang and Washington in recent weeks. Japan, South Korea, and the United States have also held trilateral talks in Washington. The U.S. State Department was hesitant to make any predictions about the talks when Davies' travel plans were released last week, but did add that every discussion is an opportunity. North Korea pulled out of the six-party talks in 2009 and has called for their resumption with no preconditions. Bill Ide, Beijing.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has the right to voice his objection to a potential nuclear deal with Iran, but that his concerns are unfounded. Mr. Netanyahu calls the deal bad for Israel and a gift to Iran. Secretary Kerry says he has great respect for the Israeli leader's fear that the deal will leave his country vulnerable, but stresses the U.S. is deeply committed to Israel's security. Russia's President Vladimir Putin says there is a real chance to resolve the standoff over Iran's nuclear program. The Kremlin says Mr. Putin delivered a statement in a telephone conversation with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, who welcomed Russia's efforts in the negotiations. Russia is one of 6 nations, including the United States, set to take part in another round of talks with Iran in Geneva Wednesday. French President François Hollande is urging Israel and the Palestinians to finally make peace, saying Jerusalem must be the capital of both Israel and a Palestinian state. Mr. Hollande made the comments while addressing Israel's parliament Monday, urging both sides to make gestures that could further advance the peace process. Egypt is joining other countries in the Middle East in ramping up vaccinations against polio. The move comes as an outbreak in Syria threatens a comeback of the disease. VOA's Elizabeth Arrett has more at our Middle East Bureau in Cairo.
Egypt has begun a new round of vaccinations against polio, one of several national efforts in the Middle East, after the crippling disease recently resurfaced in war-torn Syria. UNICEF representative Philippe Douamel in Cairo notes the virus needs no visa to cross borders.
This is terrible news for everyone.
Across Cairo, anxious parents are bringing their children to health ministry clinics as the Syria outbreak brought Egypt's immunization campaign new urgency. Elizabeth Arrett, VOA News, Cairo.
Russian investigators are trying to determine why a passenger airliner crashed while trying to land in the city of Kazan, 720 kilometers east of Moscow, killing all 50 people aboard. Investigators have found both black boxes, which record the plane's flight data and the crew's conversations. The U.S. Space Agency launched a new exploratory mission to Mars, hoping to learn more about the red planet's mysterious atmosphere and climate. If all goes well, the MAVEN spacecraft, carrying 8 science instruments, will reach Mars in 10 months and then settle into an orbit around the planet. NASA says it's the first spacecraft designed to explore the upper Martian atmosphere. I'm Ray Kouguell, VOA News. More at voanews.com.